No,
Okay,
go
I'm
ahead.
recording and we're talking about how to support rebooting a new chapter and what advice you would have. So anyway, handing it off to you, Teresa, to share what
Yeah,
you
I
thought.
was just sort of situation setting to say we started in New York chapter was initially started in mid 2020. It was right during the election. I had two co-hosts. We had like a really nice launch event, had a bunch of people there. It was our first. We had a second smaller event, and then one chapter lead couldn't do it anymore, and then another chapter lead couldn't do it anymore, and I tried to sustain it for a little bit on my own, and it just didn't. It was really difficult in the New York area in the middle of COVID. So then it kind of went dormant, and then I'll pass the mic to Julia, who is an absolute rock star, and reinvigorated that chapter while I moved on to Norwalk, Connecticut.
Yeah, thanks for the context setting. I guess I'll say this. The first event, I would have very low expectations and do something just like fun and vibey. Like, don't put too much effort into like workshop and how are we gonna do this? Because so we did drinks on the rooftop. I am a big believer. I'll do a little bit more context. I'm a big believer in person. So I think by the time I picked up, it was, I guess, 2021, 2022. I don't remember. So it was like a little bit past COVID already, the peak of COVID. And New York is also a different situation because picking like a central location was easier than I would imagine South Florida overall. And so yeah, we did like drinks on the terrace. And it was me, Teresa, another kind of chapter lead, and two people showed up. So it ended up being five of us. And it was very sweet, but in terms of like expectation setting, it was clearly like a very small turnout. And then it just like required some elbow grease. Don't give up, schedule something again. Those two people who showed up that first time still come to our events, so they're like our OG folks. Um, and I think like what I do, like I put a lot of time into the recruiting kind of marketing component, a lot of direct messages on LinkedIn. I remember early on, I just like searched my LinkedIn of like, who are my HR friends in New York, and reached out to a ton of people directly. Um, Probably got like the same kind of response rates as everything else, like 10%. And I think just like not, I don't know, don't be upset and don't give up and just keep hosting. And our events ended up being like 8 people, 12 people. Now we have, and now it's like more consistent. I think like when people know that there's something consistent on the schedule, it helps. Um, and yeah, we have an event on Thursday. We have almost 30 RSVPs. My sweet target number is always like 12 to 16 people. So I think we'll be right around that. Um, but yeah, I think there's like a lot of, I'm an introvert. I'm like a social introvert, and there's like a lot of socializing in the early stages of like cultivating those relationships. Um, I don't know. I don't know how helpful that is. I think it's like more general, but yeah.
That
I
was
think
so
if I can
helpful.
just, yeah, I want to just add on and give Julia a little bit more kudos that she doesn't kind of give herself credit for, which is I think one of the things that Julia does really well is she's just consistent. Like she keeps showing up, like keeps scheduling things. Um, and I think it's hard if you've got like it's hard no matter what. There are some chapters that have sort of like entire boards around people that have wanted to volunteer. And I think other chapters find that a little bit, I know I have always found that really difficult. So like I literally just put on my list is I'm going out to work, with another kind of co-lead an event with another organization as a method to sort of get my name out. So I think being open and creative and talking to Jesse and saying like, hey, Julia, have you ever tried this? Or hey, Natalia, have you ever tried this? Or hey, Jesse, we were thinking about doing something a little bit different. Would that be okay? And I think that's also something that to consider, because it doesn't always have to be just like, oh, we're doing a happy hour here, or oh, we're doing a, you know, a virtual event there. Like it could be a sponsorship for your convention, your Chamber of Commerce. It could be you know, co-hosting an event. It could be co-hosting an event with other chapters. New York and Connecticut does that all the time. If you've got other chapters either that are near you for in-person or not near you for virtual.
I'm also just gonna like chime on to what Teresa was saying. Like Julia has done so much and like is a freaking rock star, and all of the advice she just shared is incredibly valuable. And I would double down on the like just stay consistent thing. Like the idea of like if you just have a calendar of events that people are like know what's gonna come for the year, even if it's like 2 or a happy hour or 2. Oh, I might be, then my camera is frozen. Anyway, you can still hear me.
Yep.
This idea of like if people know what to expect 1 or 2 events out, then they're like, oh, this thing's going to be around for a little while. So I know what to expect. I can have it on my calendar. I can look forward to it. That's huge. The only other thing I would add is sending a message out to your existing chapter members and introduce yourself. And I would recommend that to Casey too. I know that you all just had an event, and the people who showed up know you, but like you have people on that mailing list that didn't show up, and introduce yourself, ask them to reach out to you on LinkedIn and connect. So that way they have a face with who's kind of the new lead. I think that would be the only other thing I would add.
Yeah.
I have a quick question too, on that, and like kind of helping generate that engagement with members, kind of related to the Slack group, Jesse, that we were kind of chatting on. Do any of your chapters, are they active in the Culture First Slack groups? Because I figured I'm that's one of the reasons too, like I'm thinking how to engage more with the members, and like especially with South Florida. I'm closer to Fort Lauderdale. My co-leads also in Fort Lauderdale, but I know we have members more in the Miami area, and like finding like a middle place. And there's always like a ton of freaking traffic down in Miami. Like to do a happy hour at like 6 o'clock on a Wednesday is like tough. So is it, like figuring out the time? So my thought was like, okay, if we could get our members like in the Slack group and we could kind of like poll on the best times to actually meet in person, because I do think like there is value, especially when starting up a chapter again, to do some in-person stuff. But yeah, I wanted to ask the question to see if any of you have found success in that, or do we try it out and see what happens?
Yeah, I didn't poll people, but I did try a few different things. Like I was doing workshops in the mornings, for example. People tend to be a little bit more generous with their time in that way. And those were fairly successful. And the other thing, to bring it back full circle to our opening question, we this year started to do co-working days. And that's been easy to add to the calendar kind of consistently. It's a bit more meaty than like a happy hour, because I know people are really stingy with their evenings, especially to people with, house responsibilities, home responsibilities. And that's been helpful. For me, it's been also an easy lift, as Teresa had mentioned. Like I work in a centrally located building that's really beautiful and vibey and like nice to work from. So for me to put a co-working day on the calendar costs nothing. And if like one person shows up, it's not going to be detrimental because I'm still there working anyway. But people have really loved it, to the point where I need to work, but people come to hang out. And I'm like, that's cool. You all can socialize, but like, actually have work to do. So the co-working, I know Jessie does virtual co-working as well. I feel like people like that because there's so many solopreneurs and things like that in the community that have more flexibility with how to schedule their days and times.
I'd also say, I think Slack communities, like getting people to join another Slack space can be hard. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I definitely think it's worth testing out and seeing if that works for you all. But I don't know. I like speak for myself. I'm like, no, please don't invite me to another Slack workspace. Like that's just my personal preference because I'm like, I already have too many workspaces, that I'm in. And then I know some groups have created like LinkedIn groups, and those are more so to just like share events. So like I know the Madison chapter has their own group as well. There's 150 people in there following the group, and it's not like they have like discussions and stuff. It's more so just like here's an upcoming event, or here's maybe they reshare something from myself or Demario in there, but it's not like a place where they like have a discussion board or anything like that. So I would say
And I'll add that
those would be built-
also people do WhatsApp groups depending on the community. For some, it really works well, and it's
Yeah.
hopefully a bit more intimate, but also way more direct.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's really just a preference on what works for you. I was telling the co-leads in Kansas City, I was like, can we just be on a texting basis with our chapter members? So it's not a group text message. I like one-off message people. I'm like, hey, we're doing this thing. Do you want to come? So that's where I'm at with it. I hope that helps. All right. Casey, did you have any questions as you're kind of getting rolling?
Not yet. I
Okay.
think I don't know enough to, but we're gonna start the planning. Like I've held on to that, like showing people like what to expect, and so we're gonna try and get do events every between 4 to 8 weeks until the end of the year. And I think it was really helpful to have this sort of like unplanned open happy hour as the first one that didn't have too much structure, and we just used like the Esther Perel cards. We had the belonging badges. We did the cultural office. There were some good snacks. Like it was really simple. A little bit nerve-wracking that it wasn't super planned, but I think that worked out well for us. I like the idea of introducing ourselves. I think I also think about sending us out a survey to members, and maybe that can be in the same email just to understand what kind of events people want. Because I want to make sure if we're putting stuff on, it's going to be valuable to people. Have other groups done surveys?
Yes, I also am going to share this with you all. I'm going to drop this in the chat. Sabrina Ling, who just she's rebooting the DC chapter. She built this survey out in Google Forms, and I feel like this is so extensive, and I think that it's an amazing survey though. So this could be at least like a template for you to use as well if you wanted, but it's a super basic Google form that you all can build. But the questions are great. And the other thing I was going to say was, my question, Casey, was going to be, what do you wish you would, so you obviously your first event after you've onboarded, Sarah Gray's been a chapter lead for a while. Your co-lead, that is. What do you wish you would have known now had you gone into that event for the first time? That like maybe it wasn't clear through the onboarding or whatever.
I think I would have felt more comfortable like having an idea of like the structure, what we were going to do. We figured it out like when we got there, And I was like, oh, all the components of an event that we learned about in onboarding, like how do we do that in person? So I think before, like having a solid plan, what we were going to do would have been really helpful. I don't know. It went really smoothly. It went fine. So I don't know. I think though, like it would have been cool. See that event that we went to where like we had the name badges before. I think it would have, if we'd have had time, I would have loved to like pull in some components for that to really make people feel welcome, like we knew who they were. I would have loved to be able to do that, and so doing something more personal to make people feel welcome for the next one is like top of mind.
Yes, I love that. I also was thinking about how like what Julia was saying is like it requires to be like really social, and um Julia's planned like a handful of viewing parties now at this point, and I know that she's like, I got all the logisticy stuff. I can do all, I can post the event on Bevy, and then I know she personally is like, can someone else step up and like facilitate the
Yeah.
thing once everyone gets here, because like that's her strong suit, is like logistics, coordinating, communications, like getting people there and like organizing things. And then it's like that's a whole different beast when you're like there the day of to facilitate something, and you're just like, oh, I did all this other stuff to get the people here, now you want me to speak. So I think also just being clear about, if you do have a co-lead, kind of who wants to own what a bit. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but cool. All right, anyone else have any
Fancy
other?
font you use, Julia.
I know, look at this survey. Oh my
That's some swaggy survey font.
Yeah,
Ooh,
and
I
I
don't
will.
even know if I ever filled this out.
Oh, come on.
I'm
We
sure I
did.
must have.
I think you did. We did an incentive and offered like a prize. It was like a gift card and another one swag box. The gift card was really because we had end of year budget left, and I was like, oh, I have like $100 that we should use, so that's what we used it for. And I will say I'm fairly confident that I don't know that this survey would have been had so many responses when I first started, as opposed to like having events and knowing people who know me and will fill out my survey. We didn't have like a huge response rate. It was maybe like 20 people, but it actually really was helpful because I didn't spend too much time thinking like, oh, what should we do? I was like, here's what people are interested in. So here are the workshops that we're booking. That's it. And then it also took a little bit myself out of the equation. I've been running the chapter for a couple of years, and like this is not the Julia show. So I don't need to think about like what I'm interested in. It's like, okay, this is what people want to do. So that's what we're gonna do.
That being said, I would be a frequent viewer of the Julia show. I would binge it over the weekend. That was actually a new like a new link that I was thinking, or like a new post that I was thinking about putting on. I gotta admit, like a guilty pleasure is I do binge a lot of TV shows, like The Bear, watched it all in the weekend, like all these shows. I'm like, I want to post on LinkedIn and be like, what are we binging this weekend? And that's like the only question.
Do
Just
it.
like, what
I
are
love
we
that.
binging?
Okay, I'm gonna pause this recording
Boys.
because I feel like this was a juicy
Sorry,
convo. Others will find this super valuable. So cheers.